You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 300 of Meet the Farmers, a big milestone for me. I am your host, Ben Eagle. My guest today is a leading voice in regenerative agriculture circles. Tim Parton has been the farm manager of a 300-hectare arable enterprise in Staffordshire since 2003. Over time, he's moved towards a biological, regenerative and no-till farming system with cover crops, biological inputs and minimal synthetic inputs. But he hasn't always had this system, as he'll explain today. He's incorporating a 50-50 winter-spring crop rotation. In 2020, he was a finalist in the Farm Innovator of the Year category of the Farmers Weekly Awards, most notably for adapting a John Deere 750 direct drill with additional hoppers to place microbial brews and companion crops at drilling. This has reduced his synthetic nitrogen and phosphate usage significantly whilst maintaining his wheat yields. His soils have gained around 0.2% organic matter annually, and according to his Farm Carbon Toolkit carbon footprint survey, the farm now sequesters significantly more carbon than it emits. In March 2024, Tim suffered a farm accident, resulting in paralysis from the waist down and the amputation of part of his left leg. A fundraiser started by a farming colleague raised thousands of pounds to support his rehabilitation, with contributions across the farming community. Tim's resilience and determination is truly inspiring, and despite the accident, he remains steadfast in his farming career. As well as the farm, he also consults for other farmers, and he's a key member of the Green Farm Collective group of farmers innovating and promoting regenerative methods. Tim Parton, welcome to Meet the Farmers.
Thanks, Ben. Honoured to be here. Really kind of you to ask me to come along.
Well, it's great to have you here for this. For those who aren't familiar with your work, how would you describe your approach to farming, I suppose, first of all?
I suppose I've come full circle, Ben. When I first left university, I was a massive tillage, inputs, got to use chemicals. The only way we're going to feed, and we've got to get higher yields, and we've got to keep pushing and pile it on. We know what we're doing, and quite frankly, none of us knew what we were doing. We'd all been led down that path and educated down that path that we needed to apply all these poisons, for want of a better word, because they are. You wouldn't want to drink any of these cans of fungicide or insecticide. And so I came from that, a true believer. If the young me was talking to the old me now, we wouldn't get on. It's as simple as that. Now I class myself as a biological nutritionalist farmer. So I don't use fungicides. I don't use insecticides. I don't use growth regulators. I don't use pre-emergent herbicides. I use very few herbicides or no herbicides at all. I've got nitrogen down very low. Nitrogen is always our best friend, but it's also our worst enemy. It's always got to be kept in balance. And what I've realised is that if you get the nutrition right in a plant, it's just like us. If we've got the right nutrition, we don't get ill. It's as simple as that. And it's all the work I do is enhancing the plant's immune system, so it's not attracted by insects, and it's not pathogens can't get established, because I'll get the strength of the cell wall of the plant so strong they can't penetrate the plant. They can't get established. And it's all about using natural nutrition to do that.
Clearly, as you said, you have changed your views and methods over time. So rewinding a bit, tell us about how you got into farming, really, and eventually into managing the farm where you are now.
I'm told from as soon as I could walk, I was my father's shadow. All I ever wanted to do was farm. Still is. I love farming. I live and breathe it. It's always more than just a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a hobby. It's your passion. And it was all I ever wanted to do. I took over the management of this farm from my father, so I've been here a long time. But it is just always a passion of mine. And I'd always had an interest in soil. I could never understand why people abuse their soil so much and why they didn't take it seriously. And that passion has grown over time. And the more I learnt about soil, the more I wanted to know. And I'm the sort of person, whatever I do, I want to know everything about it. But where biology and soil's concerned, one lifetime isn't going to be enough. We know so little about soil biology, and yet it can give us so much. I've always have the analogy that last century was the chemical century. This century has got to be the biological one. Biology's got all the answers. We just need to ask the right questions. And it infuriates me that there isn't more money put into developing natural biology to work with it. But of course, there's no money for big companies to get back from that because we're working with nature and what's natural. So it's got to come from farmers, which is why I'm always about educating fellow farmers, and we all try different trials and share the information, because sharing is what it's all about, because together we can move forward. For me, really, I suppose the big one was I had a bout of anxiety, depression, which wasn't very nice. My wife worked in mental health at the time. She wasn't keen for me to go on antidepressants. Everybody's got to find their own path. I'm certainly not telling anybody to follow what I did, but what my wife thought, and I totally believed that if we get my nutrition right, it would help. I went down to a place called the Brain Bio Centre in London, where I got myself tested via my hair and blood and everything else to see what the nutrition was like in my body. And I addressed those deficiencies, and with some counselling, sure enough, I got better quite quickly. And that was the real light bulb moment for me, because I suddenly realised how important food is, how important what we're putting into our bodies is for our health, be it mental or be it physical. They both come down to the food that we're eating and what we're putting in. And from there, I got really interested in the way the food was produced. And suddenly the light bulb moment came that, hang on a minute, these plants, if I want them to give my immune system the right boost, I've got to grow those plants with the right immune system from day one. So I'm getting all those phytochemicals, all the polyphenols, all the flavonoids, all the secondary metabolites that my body needs, those natural antibiotics to defend itself, we need to grow in our food. And it's the same for the animals grazing. They do the same, and their immune systems will be exactly the same if you give them the right food. And that's where it all comes right the way back to having a working soil. And there are very few working soils around. Most soils have got loads of bacteria, but the actual different cycles of the soil, from having the bacteria, the fungi, and then the protozoa. So you've got that cycling going on, that everything's eating each other, working right the way up. And a classic example, is the amount of deer that's got out of control in this country. We haven't got any wolves anymore. Man is the natural predator. We're not being enough predator. They're doing an awful lot of damage. Well, our soils, the whole ecosystem within our soils has been destroyed from deep tillage and use of high nitrogen. And we've stopped that cycling, and that's where a lot of these nutrients aren't becoming available. The Earth's crust is never going to wear out. All the nutrients that we need are there. We just need the biology to convert them, which was going on for millions of years before humankind even was a sparkle in somebody's eye to get established. Mother Earth had already sorted it all out. Mother Earth had come up with a way of fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere and feeding plants. Haber-Bosch came up with a brilliant process, but it's still not as good as Mother Earth's. The amount of pressure and heat and energy they use to make nitrogen, Mother Earth just does it without all that, just using natural biology. And that's, humankind has never been able to copy that. And when you think that the air that we breathe is 78% nitrogen, why the hell do we want to buy it? And the damage that nitrogen does to our planet, from putting excessive nitrogen on our soil, we're burning all that carbon out, and then we're getting it in our waterways. We're getting high nitrate levels in our water. We're getting oxygen dead zones in our oceans, and we can't keep doing that. We cannot keep turning a blind eye to all this damage that we're doing in the cause to feed a growing population, when we're feeding high calorific, empty calorie food, empty nutrition. There's nothing there, and people want more and more food because there isn't the nutrition in the food in the bloody first place, that their bodies are saying, I need food, but they're giving it that much bloody rubbish and crap that they keep eating because their body keeps wanting it, and it's not there. And that's what regen to me is all about, because people often say, well, what is regen? Regen is all about getting a working soil. And that's the top and bottom of it, because once you get a working soil, everything else starts to fit into place. You don't need, I haven't put TSP or MOP on my soil for 10 years more now, probably, because everything is cycling, and yet my indices keep going up. My potassium was getting too high at one point because I was cycling so much and releasing so much.
Okay.
And that's what regen is all about, is that working soil to grow a healthy plant to feed us at the end of the day, but not having the impact on the planet that we're actually destroying the very environment that we need to sustain for generations to come.
I could feel almost from your very being that the personal journey you've been on and the passion behind what you're doing. Take us onto a farm level. So take us before you had that sort of moment of I need to change. What was your rotation back then? What was your system? And what was that transition process shifting towards more of the system where you are now?
I suppose, well, historically, we were a very mixed farm. So we had sheep, we had beef, we had potatoes, we had sugar beet. We'd grow milling wheats, malting barleys, and oilseed rape. That was the rotation. And then potatoes stopped many years ago when quotas finished. And then sugar beet stopped when we closed the factory. The sheep went because they weren't that, we needed to start. We were not a massive farm, so we needed to start and specialise. So the cattle went, and then the sheep went, and we just became an arable farm. I still grow milling wheats, oilseed rape. I grow spring malting barley, spring beans, spring lupins, spring oats. I grow wild flowers. Every field on the farm will have a cover crop on it in the 12-month period. And I also have grass in the rotation, which I produce haylage for the equine market because we've got a big equine market around us. So the rotations have changed on the farm. And then from 2009 onwards, I stopped cultivating. I started off using strip till, where we just do a tiny strip tillage where we put the seed in the ground, but we've tilled it. And I did that for a few years. And then I realised I was still moving too much soil because it's such a delicate environment down there where fungi is concerned. They do not like too much disturbance. And I always use the analogy, it's just like somebody putting a ball and chain through your house. And just as you start to lay a few bricks and start to get things back, somebody puts the ball and chain through again. And it just can't get established. And that's what fungi is like. It's a very delicate thing. And so I went to zero till then. And back in 2012, I started playing around with biology. And that's when I started to understand that the nitrogen is all around us. We just need the biology to fix it for us. But we're never going to get that biology working if we still use high amounts of nitrogen on our soil, because there's no need. Biology only works if there's a need. The plant will only feed the biology, as in the plant will put exudates out through its roots of amino acids, of carbohydrates, of sugars. It'll feed that biology in what we call the rhizophagy cycle in order for that biology to feed the plant. I'm a firm believer that biology invented plants to get fed, and that's how the whole world evolved. And if you look back in time, you can see how that bacteria left the water and came onto land, and fungi came along a little later, but it's the bacteria and fungi that created the place in which we live. The human body is made up of more bacterial cells than it is human cells. Biology is what controls the world. Everything is connected in my mind. We're all connected to everything. We've just got to respect it and work with it. And there's enough space on the planet for everything and everybody, but we just need to work together and have respect.
I mean, when I was doing the research for this episode, there are quite a few articles and things out there on you and your story,
What
what you've been doing. Just a few. I came across, definitely the term biological farming was almost everywhere. So why that particular term? Do you prefer that particular term as opposed to regen, or is it subtly different?
The problem when I first started going out on this route, because everything has to get labelled, doesn't it? It doesn't matter
of course.
what you're working in. There's got to be a label put on it. We've got that many labels for our kids these days and conditions. It's ridiculous. It was conservation ag when I started, which fitted what I was trying to do. Regen came along. Regen's a brilliant term, but the problem is now it's got pulled and twisted and diluted. Nobody knows what it is. Most people, if you ask them what regen is, they don't know what it is. And like I've already said, it's all about getting the soil working. That's what all this is all about. It all starts with the soil because all life starts from the soil. And so I do like the term, but it's got misleading, and it needs more definition of what is regen, because I meet a lot of people and they tell me bits and bobs what they're doing, and they call themselves a regen farmer, and they're anything but. In my mind, they're still using high synthetic inputs. still piling the fungicides on. When I stopped using fungicides, that's when my soil made a massive jump, because when you use a fungicide, you've put it on, you're keeping those pathogens out, you're killing everything, you're putting a barrier there on that plant. And then all of a sudden you've put the combine in, you've chopped it. Now you're saying, come back, we want you to digest that and mineralize it for us so we can have all those nutrients out. And the fungi you've killed, you've stopped it, you've put the barrier there. You can't do both. You've either got to work at what you want to do or step away from it. And I'm not putting the pressure or pointing the finger, but people often ask me, I haven't got my soil working. Where am I going wrong? What am I doing? And you've got to look at what you're doing. Quite often as human beings, as farmers, we're always treating the symptom rather than looking at the cause. And because all that debris, for instance, that I just said, that's not being broken down, next minute then that'll start to produce ethanol, it'll start to degrade, you'll have loads of slugs coming in, and then you've got a slug problem. And there's, I can't grow anything, I've got too many slugs. Well, you just created the problem. And it's all this knock-on effect. You've got to bring it back. Why has that happened? Why am I putting that on? What am I trying to achieve? Rather than just having a blueprint. Everybody wants the blueprint of what I do, and it doesn't exist, because you're dealing with a living entity. Every day, every week, every year is different. You've got to be the observer. You've got to think about what you're doing and then make adjustments. I could do chemical farming, just sat in my office looking at the calendar and looking out the window, and I wouldn't be far wrong, because it's so easy and predictable.
I'm going to be careful with my next question, actually, when it comes to rolling it out to other farms, I suppose. It's about cover cropping and companion planting, I suppose, and what you've learnt on your particular farm.
Cover crops are at the heart of everything I do, and that's the real where it starts in my mind. It's again, it's got to be on a regular basis, which is why every field within a 12-month period will have a cover crop on it here, because that's at the heart of what I do. Our soils are so depleted of carbon from all this excess nitrogen we've put on and deep tillage. There's nothing left. And I've been on plenty of farms where they've got no organic matter. They've had to grass the whole farm down. And where we're getting told that there is only 40 to 50 years less, there's less than that on some farms, because they're already at that stage where they can't grow anything. We have got to wake up. We have got to see that we've got to get that carbon back. And I've been lucky enough to speak on this subject all around the world, and everywhere I go, the soils are the same. We've just burned all that carbon out, and carbon is the essential ingredient to life. And we've got to get that carbon stored back where it belongs. And cover crops are the best way of doing that. And that's always my crux. It's when you see big companies buying up farms and planting it with trees, why don't we plant it with cover crops and grow food and eat it, and we'll sequester just as much carbon, if not more, but we're still producing food. That's what it's all about. And that is the essence of farming, producing food. But with regen, for want of a better word, we can heal the planet, we can heal its population, all in that one little measure. And that's what it's regenerating everything. But people have got to wake up and smell the coffee, that the clock is ticking. We haven't got time to keep ignoring it and keep demanding all this cheap processed. I'm not going to call it food, because it's not. It's just rubbish. And you're just putting all that into your body and then wondering why you're getting sick. When I was a boy, we'd get the odd person with cancer, but nothing like it is now. It's so common. People don't even ask why you're getting it. It's just like it's inevitable. The same as dementia and everything else. And it's all coming back to the food we're eating, in my mind. We are what we eat. But we've got to go back to asking the question, what are we eating? Because people don't even know half the time.
Do you think we have that discussion enough in farming circles? I mean, certainly, if you listen to farming podcasts, you see what's actually out there in the farming press as well. I think it's actually rarer, certainly in agri-specific media, that you hear that story coming through.
Totally agree. And again, it's the way farmers have been educated. It's I come across it a lot, and I think when you start out on this journey, and a good friend of mine, Simon Childs, told me this one, and when he started out direct drilling, and when you first start direct drilling, it works, and you think, blimey, this is fantastic, and you see the improvement, you get on the soapbox and you want to tell everybody, and then you suddenly realise you haven't got an audience, and then you get really angry and bitter, and you think, well, if you don't want to listen, don't bother. I'm not going to say it again. And then you come out the other side and you just help the people that are ready for transition. And it's not something that happens overnight. I think the best example I've got, I had a farmer come round on a farm walk back in 2012, and he argued with me all the way round about what I was trying to achieve and how it wouldn't work. And And then in 2019, he phoned me up and apologised, and he was transitioning his own farm. But it
Really?
took him that long for the light to get bright enough for him to take notice of it. I've had it quite often where people have heard me speak, and then it's a couple of years later before they start to implement anything because they've pulled it over, they've thought about it, they've gone back and looked for things that I said to notice and check for to see how graded your farm is. And then the light comes on, but once it comes on, you can't switch it off. It just keeps getting brighter, and that's when it starts to get fun, and people can enjoy farming again. Because when you wake up in the morning and you're not waking up thinking, "What are we going to kill today?" You're waking up thinking, "How are we going to enhance this farm today? How are we going to make things better?" You know, the bird life on the farm goes through the roof with the way I'm farming. I have a bird ringing group come, and they get so excited because I always remember the first night they came here, and they come with a thermal imaging camera, and they only came to show me what they do. But they were like, these are blokes in their 70s, and they were running around like little kids because they'd never seen so many birds in their entire career. And they caught that many that night, and they hadn't actually come. They didn't think they'd catch any because we were so noisy and just showing me what they were doing, and they did. And it's the same. I had an entomologist come, and the amount of insects I showed her around the whole farm, but she only went about 30, 40 yards because there was so many insects. She couldn't keep up catching them. But once you get that whole ecosystem working, you can't help but smile and enjoy because it feels right, it smells right, and you're making more money, and everything is performing as it should, and there is room on the farm for everything to thrive rather than kill, kill, kill. I think in the regen world, in the farming world, there's been a lot of people that have tried it without having the proper understanding of what they need to do and where they are and where they're starting off from. And then it fails, and then the neighbours see it fail, and then they say, "Oh, it doesn't work." And the one that always cracks me up, Ben, is in a wet year, if you drill a field with a direct drill and it fails, that system's no good. If you plough and power hour a field and it fails, the bloody weather was awful. That's the difference. People are always looking for a reason for not to have to do it because people don't like change, or a lot of people don't. They find change uncomfortable. But if we don't change, we're out on that road of destruction. And that's why I always love the book Dirt by David Montgomery. And in it, he describes how all these civilizations have failed because they didn't look after their soil. But it's over such a long period. Nobody can tell that third generation what it was like 100 years ago. And that's where we're in that same position now. Nobody knows how good these soils were. We can only see what we've got. And what we've got is very poor, and it's in such a bad state.
It's funny, isn't it? If you go back to what you were talking about with drills and looking things on a single season versus for the long term. I mean, I've walked behind direct drills in wet years on clay soils where you've got these big clumps coming out, and it creates a complete mess. And you think, what on earth are you doing? But it's 1 year, isn't it? It's one season. It's one field.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of examples over the years, and too many people go out there in the wrong conditions. They get too desperate, which I could sort of understand financially. But the way I always look at it now, because I'm 50-50 spring to winter cropping, if it's too wet for the winter, I'll just put a spring crop in. But I've got my own seed. The risk is so much lower because I'm not buying in seed. I'm not using the chemicals. I'm not using the input. So I'm not in that vulnerable position that I've spent so much money. It's got to work, but it will work. You know, I've had record yields from the way I'm farming that we've never done anything close to it when we were conventional or chemical farming. But you have to grow a pair of balls, basically, and I don't mean that in a sexist way. You just got to have that confidence that what you're doing is right, and you will get the right time. Because even with a plough and power hour drill, you put it up in the wrong conditions, you're starting off on the back foot, and that crop will be on the back foot all the way through. You haven't achieved anything. And I was speaking down in London yesterday, and on the train, there's loads of examples where you can see crops that just were drilled in totally the wrong conditions. They've only got half a crop. It's not going to make any money. What have they achieved? It's just not worth it. You've just got to be patient, and it's no good thinking all the neighbours are going, so I'm going to go and drill. They're probably making the same mistake. Why do you want to copy them and make the same mistake? It's being your own person, and everybody knows when a fit is field or fit to drill or unfit to drill. Sometimes it's borderline and you gamble and you get away with it, and sometimes you don't. That's fair enough. That's a risk I'm prepared to take. But when it's downrightly not fit to drill, what the hell are you doing out there?
Let's take you back a few years for drill modification actually that you saw some recognition for, and drawing on from that, really, I just wanted to ask you about open source style innovation within the farming community, adapting kit specifically for your farm as well. Your thoughts on that?
Back in 2015, when I moved to zero tillage, then I knew I wanted to farm biologically, and I wanted to brew up biology because it makes it so cheap. I wanted to make my own compost and extract it and get all those microbes back into the soil that we'd been destroying for so long. But I needed a way of getting it down there, so I knew I needed a liquid system so as I could put a seed drench right on top of the seed. And that was a challenging thing then, because there was nothing on the market that could do that. I worked with a guy who made me a superb system that didn't drip and worked extremely well. But then I'd got to come up with a pipe that would drop that seed drench right on top of the seed, which I bought a cheap pipe vendor from B&Q, and I made the pipe. And now those pipes are on all 750 drills that have got liquid applicators, and loads of other drills the same. I always think that every problem can be overcome. We just need to think about it. Nothing winds me up more when you talk to somebody and you tell them an idea and, oh, that can't be done. How the hell do you know you haven't even thought about it? You can't just dismiss it. That's just an excuse not to even try. And I love problems, and quite often I'll go to bed on a problem and I'll wake up with the answer. And it's just one of those. And then I knew I wanted to start companion cropping. So I needed more hoppers. At the time, there was no drills on the market with more than one hopper. So I put hoppers on the drill and adapted the drill so as I could companion crop or add microfertilizer or do whatever I needed to do. I put row cleaners on the drill because I was having a problem growing oilseed rape where the chaff was a bit thick behind the combine. It didn't spread it very well. Put a row cleaner and just clean that chopped straw or chaff away. I got good seed to soil contact. I got over the problem. And people will say to me, have you finished adapting your drill? I don't just do things for fun. I do it to get over problems. But every problem can be overcome. You just have to take your time and think about it. And I'm a big believer in adapting. As farmers, we're innovators. We have to come up with innovative ideas to get over problems sometimes, because it's not always pre-made or fabricated. You have to do things to suit you and suit your farm and suit your problem. But it can all be done. You just have to get around it.
Critics of regen ag sometimes point to yield drop, certainly in those early years. How do you come back on that?
I've never had it. I've never experienced it. I think for me, a lot of the time their soil isn't quite where they think it is, and they're trying to go too hard, or they've got compaction and they don't alleviate it. They think they're direct driller, so that I'm not tilling soil. I'm a direct driller. I don't have to do that. Well, if you've got compaction, you do. Roots are better than steel, but sometimes you need a little bit of help from steel just to get some air back in. Nothing grows without air, and I see that time and time again. So I think the yield drop comes from not making the right decisions at some point within that crop that has created a problem. I'd say my yields only ever went up. I think the one thing that I regret, but I wouldn't have been able to do it because of cost, but what I would have loved to have done if I could talk to me 16 years, 17 years ago, is keep the power hour drill and keep the plough, and let's just keep doing 2 acres every year, and let's really see what the differences are and yield and everything else. And let's keep it that eye system, and let's look at the difference in the colour of the soil and the smell of the soil and the worm counts. And really, I've just kept that ongoing as an experiment just to show people, because farmers are always so visual learners. And I think if I'd have kept that 2 acre patch that every year was still being brutalised, I've seen the colour changes in my soil. Well, I average normally 37 worms per square fork. So all those worms are cycling everything for me all the while. My infiltration weights of water, I can do 1 inch every 30 seconds normally. And I wish I'd have just had that 2 acre site just to show everybody this is where I would have been if I hadn't have done anything. So I know it would be dreadful, but it would have been lovely to have been able to show people that, because farmers are very visual learners in my experience.
Yeah. I mean, on that, or linked to that, I suppose, in terms of monitoring data, tracking your soil health over time, what sort of data have you collected over the years?
It's collecting your own data. And I think another mistake, and I always advise people when they're starting off now, collect some soil in a jam jar and put it on the shelf, and then come back to it in 5 years and see the difference in colour, because you will. Because when you're looking at it every day, you don't notice. But I've held that many farm walks here, and people have come and they've, God, your soil's changed again, and it's changed
Yeah.
again. Where I don't notice it when I'm looking at it, but doing infiltration rates, doing worm counts, monitoring your organic matters, that's when you're going to start to prove to yourself the changes that's happening and occurring on your farm. And that's when you can really give you that encouragement to keep going, because sometimes you will question why you're doing it and everything else. And I always use the analogy, it's like swimming across a river, and you're sort of swimming across and you're all eager and excited, and you're getting halfway and you're just starting to get a little bit tired, and all of a sudden that bank you left starts to get a little bit more sunshine, and you think, I'm going back there. And just keep looking forward, remind yourself why you're doing this and what outcomes you want from it. And it's not, if it was easy, it'd be bloody boring. Let's not mess about. It's not easy. There's loads of challenges, but there's loads of challenges in farming anyway. That's what we do farming for. We all moan about it, but we do it for those challenges because every year is different. We've got different weather, different problems. And that's what makes farming interesting, is all those different problems that we have to overcome. And at the minute, we've got loads of problems that are out of our control with government and everything else, which makes farming a little bit more interesting, for want of a better word, because there's so many uncertainties that are out of our control that shouldn't be there. In my mind, we're not getting the backing that we should. And that's a different kind of challenge within farming. But the actual farming challenges are what makes the job worthwhile.
So you could say, could broaden that out to life, couldn't you, as well? The challenges actually make life interesting as well. It's just how you see it.
Definitely.
I do want to ask you briefly about your farm accident, if that's okay, back in March 24, but mostly framed through your mindset, and because clearly it's coming across strongly today as well. It's like you're massively, all those buzzwords, you're massively resilient, but you're also really driven in what you're doing as well. So tell us about the accident, but in the context of what your mindset was like in the weeks following and how that's shifted.
It's been a bloody hard journey. I won't lie. I've had some very dark times because it's taken away everything I love. I loved everything about my life, and it is hard. And I do have some dark days, but I'm always a glass half full person, and there's always something to be gained and a positive and some enjoyment to be had. And I look for that shining light. People have often said to me in the past when things have gone wrong, why are you still laughing? Well, what's the point in crying? I can't change it. There's no point in me shouting and bawling and making your life a misery, because that's not going to get the outcome that I want any quicker. It's far better if we stop positive. Everybody will think clearly and everybody will get over the problem far quicker. I've always thought life throws challenges at you for a reason, to sort of help you advance, be that spiritually, mentally, whatever. And I'm still searching for the answers to my current situation. A lot to offer. I can still help an awful people, and with the equipment, I can still get out there and do an awful lot on farm. So there's still a lot to be grateful for. I could easily have not been here, and so I'm happy to be happy, if that makes sense.
Mm. And also, I mean, in that time since as well, I mean, you're consulting for a number of other farms as well, aren't you?
Yes, I help many farmers around the world. Again, I love doing that and helping them on their journey and helping them advance to where they want to get to. Once that light bulb has come on, as I said earlier, people want information. They want to advance their farms, and I don't want them to have to go through the pains with some of the situations that I went through and how I had to overcome it. So I'm more than happy to help. That's why I have my own website, timpartonfarming.com. So people can go there, they can read articles, they can see videos of me, and it just helps people on their way. And then they've got access to ask me questions, and I help people, say, all around the world. Soils has different problems, but it's still the same thing wherever we go around the world. But it's all been in such a dilapidated state because we've abused it so much.
We're recording this episode in late-ish June, probably coming out in early July. Groundswell is just around the corner, or it will have just happened when this episode is released, and that's classically a time when lots of people ask, where is the regen ag movement going, and all of those sort of big questions. Going to ask you that question now. Where do you see regen ag going in the UK over the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Regen ag to me is the only way. Everybody's got to wake up. You might still ignore it, and there's still plenty of people that still plow. But every time you drop that in, you're burning your carbon out. And that's the one thing people can't argue with. Your organic matters are getting lower and lower, but some people will finish their careers and they can keep plowing and it won't matter, but the next generation will suffer. So the work I do with Green Farm Collective, we've launched our own flour, which is called Rise, which we launched in March. That's going really, really well. And that we're going to get farmers a £20 a tonne premium on top of what they'd have got for a bread making wheat. And I think that premium will entice farmers to join us because we have our own audit and growing criteria, but it's a very workable one that people can use. And that's where I feel people, once they see that they can have a financial reward for doing this, and I see industry demanding the carbon footprint of their food going forward. I go on loads and loads of panels discussing that more and more these days, that companies are very interested now to know what carbon has been burnt to make that food and how it can be reduced. And I don't think farmers will have a choice then, because how can you keep, for instance, when you plough and power hour drill, that's probably 5 tonnes of carbon going up to the atmosphere. That's got to be replaced somehow in order to have a carbon neutral product. Us as founder members of the Green Farm Collective, we're all carbon positive. And if we can do it, anybody can do it. And if we can then produce food that is carbon positive, companies are interested in that food. And then the other thing, the taste of that food is far better. I've made bread from our flour. We did a taste testing session at our open day with 4 different other types of bread, and I got half the broach for my bread because it did. And I might, again, it's the best bread I've ever tasted, but I might be a bit biased. But the taste was there. And I do some work with Matthew Adams of Griffin Foods, and he's done a lot of work with a refractometer, because the best computer for analysing the food we're eating is our own brain on our own shoulders. But it's got to be whole foods, not processed foods. But once you give the body a chance, it will always know what it needs. But it needs the foods to be able to distinguish what that food is. That's where the difference from growing food in a working soil, the taste is through the roof, because it's what we need, is what nourishment our bodies needs, and that's where we've been going wrong.
Broadening this out, and you have inferred in some of your other answers some of the broader challenges that farmers are facing at the moment, most notably in policy circles. You sort of insinuated to that as well. But I'm interested, broadly, and you can pick examples in any area, I suppose, for this that you'd like, but do you see more opportunity or challenge in farming right now? I'm guessing from the way that you see everything, you're going to be more on the former, but it is a balance, isn't it?
It is a balance, and we've as an arable farmers, we've been in the perfect storm for the last couple of 3 years. The weather's been against us. Prices of sale of produce has been on the floor, and we've got the government that's gone back on an agreement that they promised us. So it is the perfect storm at the moment. I am a positive person, and I do think we will get through this, as we've always done. You can look back in time as in the history of farming, and we've had depressions before. Farmers are all quite resilient. We keep going, but I think the answer will still come from producing carbon neutral food, and that's what it's educating the public to let them know the good that we can do as a regenerative farmer. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, but we need to educate them. I do an awful lot of talks to civic societies and everything else, and at the end, people always want to buy the food, but we just haven't been there to supply it, and we're getting there, but it just takes time. So I think the future still is bright. I'll always be positive, but I think it's going to take time for the message to get through. And I think industry's going to get more interested in natural capital, because I think government will push them that way. So I think as farmers, we're going to get an income from natural capital and carbon. And I think the government will push industry that way, because, again, this government's doing so much about neutral energy and everything else, when surely they're going to be encouraging companies to offset their carbon. But probably what they've done with national insurance and minimum wage, the companies can't afford to do it at the minute. So you've got to get the company growing again and get the economy growing again to encourage businesses then to invest in natural capital and their carbon footprint. But I think that's the future of farming, is we will be rewarded for the benefits we're doing for the greater good of the planet and all its inhabitants. As I've always said it, farmers are the heroes of the world. Nobody else can do what we can do, as in putting that carbon back into the soil and feeding the population along the way. And I certainly would never want to eat synthetic food when I know it can be grown naturally. Why do we want to suddenly grow synthetic when we can improve the planet with the way I'm farming? I've showed how the bird life, insect life, everything goes through the roof when you farm my way, but I'm still getting the yields that everybody can have a loaf of bread on their table. But that loaf of bread might need to be a couple of pence more expensive to give me the income as for the farm. But I don't think anybody would moan about a couple of pence on a loaf of bread for the story they're getting from having a regenerative loaf of bread that they know they're playing their part in having clean air and clean water and a planet that's rejuvenating itself for generations to come. And they're playing their part by buying that loaf of bread.
With all that in mind, we're going to have to start to round it up. Sadly, I always ask people the same two questions at the end of the show. The first is a message for the public, and the second is a message for your fellow farmers. What would your message to the public be?
The message to the public is ask how your food is grown, ask where it's been grown, and ask who's grown it. Because those are the questions you should know. You should know what you're eating and where it's come from. Because we import so much food that isn't grown to a high standard, that's just grown to make money. And that's not good for your body. And you need to know how it's been grown, where it's been grown, and who's grown it, and why have they grown it. We need to be more assertive, because supermarkets are just supplying you with stuff that they think you want to buy. I use supermarkets, so I'm not going to say we should all be buying off a farmer. We live in a fast world. If I'd got the time, I'd love to go and just buy off one farmer. I do buy grass-fed beef and lamb off fellow farmers and pork. So I get all my meat from where I know it's coming from. Vegetables, it's a little bit harder, but ask the question, where's it been grown? And I guarantee nobody in a supermarket would know. They'll just look at the label and say, oh, if it's beans, it's Egypt or whatever. You won't have a clue what's been put on that crop or what you're eating. And we should know. We should have the right to be able to trace that food right the way back to source, because with blockchain in the digital age, that's perfectly possible. And people should be demanding their food grown in a regenerative way and play their part, because everybody should be responsible for the impact they're having on the planet in which we've been gifted this opportunity to live and breathe. You should act responsible for it so as it's there for your grandchildren, and not just be grabbing and not looking at the consequences of what you're doing, what impact you're having in your lifestyle.
And a message to farmers.
Fellow farmers, I'm sure there'll be some listening to this that are very full tillage, and they'll think I'm mad, but I would always ask the same question: what's your carbon level in your soil, and how are you going to make that grow for generations to come? Because without carbon, you can't grow anything. It's as simple as that. And we're burning that carbon out at a tremendous rate. If you think for every kilo of nitrogen that's spare in the soil, you could be burning 100 kilos of carbon out. That's an awful lot of carbon. And you can look at any field and see that hedge line and see where that hedge is and where that field was and how that field has dropped in the time that hedge has been planted, and see how much carbon's been burnt out. There's a lot of damage out there. Question your own methods. I know it's challenging, and I know a lot of people have failed at what I'm talking about, but with the right support, you won't fail, and you'll move to another level, and you'll never look back, because together we can make a difference.
Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and there's lots there for listeners to contemplate on, I'm sure. I'm assuming you're going to be at Groundswell. I mean, I know this episode will already be out.
Yeah, I'm speaking loads of times at Groundswell, so I'm sure if you catch me in both days somewhere, yeah. So I'm speaking both days, so yeah, lots to.
I imagine you'll be a busy man. But no, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Ben. Really enjoyed it.
That is it for today. A massive thank you to my guest, Tim Parton, for coming on the show. Thank you also for listening. If you don't already subscribe to the show and enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button now wherever you're listening. Tell a fellow farmer about the show as well. Hopefully it sparks plenty of conversations. Next time, I'll have an episode for you coming from Groundswell, discussing Regen Ag Beyond the Farm Gate is our subject for this year's Groundswell podcast. But for now, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers, and thank you very much for listening.